welcome to the Rocha Revolution. We are honored today to be joined by a great journalist, Nick Valencia. Thank you for being on today, Nick.
Oh, God bless you, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, yes, I was thinking, and we were meeting with the team this week. We keep our show a little fluid so we can really have people that are topical in what's going on. And Nick's been really on the ground in Minnesota, covering the ICE stuff, talking about the funding we were just talking about. He was on a phone call with Congressman Jimmy Gomez, who you should know was a good and is a good friend of mine, and that I was out there staying with him in LA when he first ran for office, and I was a part of his special election when he first ran.
I'm not surprised. You're involved in all the winners, Chuck.
And I really got to know a little bit about East LA and about actually Koreatown and parts of LA that I know you know well that I did not know well. I had never worked in downtown or in East LA. I had done work with the steelworkers out in Fontana and Riverside back in the day, but never downtown. And Jimmy is a great member. Matter of fact, love his wife and his baby boy.
Yeah, he's my representative in California. He represents
Bull
California.
Heights?
Yeah, 34th District. And so Eagle Rock, Highland Park, he represents my hometown.
Yeah, him and his wife, Mary, they live out by Bull Heights. And again, going out to see that community and look at the way that that community's moved around a lot is really interesting. But before we talk about California, I want to dive into, very few reporters have been on the ground with our gente, seeing what's been happening in Minnesota. And I know now that there are things moving and that Donald Trump and the administration now are making moves because they see the backlash from the American public on what they were seeing on the streets of Minnesota. But for somebody like you who was actually there, can you tell us some of what you experienced while you were there on the ground in Minnesota?
Yeah, the game has changed. We're seeing something that's not normal, something that's totally different from uh, my 20 years in covering this issue. And I want to start really quick just up top because one of the big criticisms that we hear all the time is where was this energy during Obama? And so I'm just gonna cut that cauterize that argument really quick. If you just Google my name and you put in President Obama and UACs, you will see where my energy was back then. I had the same energy, was very critical of Obama's treatment of unaccompanied child minors. I broke the story about that. I had sources within the administration back then. So the difference is now, even though Obama deported more immigrants than any other president except for Eisenhower, is that we didn't see cruelty be the point. There wasn't masked people on the streets that were concealing their identity under the guise of being doxxed. You weren't seeing constitutional limits. That's a diplomatic way of saying it. You weren't seeing the Constitution being thrown out and the Speaker of the House arguing that we don't need due process here. Due process is important, which is why it's written in the Constitution. You're not supposed to be able to go into somebody's home without a judicial warrant. And we're seeing that happen now. And so we're seeing this escalation. And for someone like me who has been consistently covering it for 20 years, I'm glad that I'm now seeing the energy that I've had for the last 2 decades on this because it really is not normal, Chuck.
I think that's the point is that when I was watching some of your live feeds, and before we go any further, Nick has created independent media. He's created his own channel. Tell folks where they can watch and see your news coverage.
Nick Valencia News, NVN. You can see us on Substack right here. Our biggest platform is probably Instagram, also YouTube and Facebook. We are not investing in TikTok, and I'm so grateful that we did not do that. So you won't see us there. I have a page, but it's not active really.
So, and I tell you that and stopped what I was saying so that you will go there and you'll like and you'll follow and subscribe like we have, because that's where I was watching Nick. So I'm on these different campaigns. I'm traveling around the country and I'm seeing Nick on the ground being forcefully moved around by federal agents.
Yeah.
Him screaming at people that he is the media, that he is not part of this protest as a participant, but he is covering that. While I think and please correct me if I'm wrong, while these agents are tear gassing people and shooting rubber bullets at people, was I seeing that correctly? And was that what you were experiencing firsthand?
Yeah, it's military grade tactics. I mean, some of the stuff that we're seeing, you would only see in war zones. They brought out an LRAD, a long range acoustic device, which it can be used to amplify unlawful assembly orders, which they did use it as, but it can also be used to basically send out a sound wave that's so powerful that it causes neurological damage. People start vomiting, people become disoriented. That was brought out. I'd never seen one of those in my decades of covering social resistance movements. The other thing is that it was not just tear gas, but the kind of chemical irritants that were being used, it was another level. This stuff made me violently dry heave. It got into my eyes. It literally took me to my knees. And I've been able to sort of process what I've gone through. And in that moment, I think that was probably the most danger that I was in was after I inhaled that irritant. I was dropped to the floor. I was on my knees and I really couldn't. I was disoriented. I was like kind of blind for about 90 seconds, 2 minutes. And it was these two locals that picked me up from either arm and, helped me out, triage me. I was able to get into a business where other people were being triaged. They didn't care that I was with the press. And I want to be rigorously honest, Chuck, because it's not all the feds. There were some federal agents, and some of those appeared on my live that they did respect the role that I had there. They did respect journalism and the ability to put a spotlight on what was going on. It's so clear to me, though, that it is an us versus them mentality right now, and anybody who does not have a law enforcement badge is seen as another right now to the feds on the streets.
So that brings me to today, and I'm really sorry you had to live through that. I think when you started saying that pain and terror is the point, you're reinforcing
Yeah.
that with what you've lived through. I think that the American people have reacted to that. Even Donald Trump, who may be lots of things, he understands politics, he understands public pressure, and he understands what and how this looked for federal agents to be doing U.S. citizens or anybody, any human in this way. So now you've seen what they will call, a softening or rampening down. But I want your reaction to what we saw from Tom Homan today, who had a press conference in Minnesota, and I covered part of it and talked about some of it today on CNN, about how he made a point to say that they want to go out and get the criminals and the most dangerous, but that they are still going to round up and mass, his words, not mine, mass deport anyone who is here illegally, his words, not mine. Uh, but he also talked about putting body cameras on federal agents and how some had and some didn't, and how he also went on to say that to be assured that the organization, and Nick, you've covered this more closely than me, so clean up any of my numbers here, but he said that they have $75 million from the big beautiful bill that they still want and have money to spend on lots of different things. Some of that can be for cameras. But did you see anything in what he said today as a softening or a different page being turned here in what we've been seeing in Minnesota or nationwide?
There's no softening. All it is like, hey, meet me in the middle as I take a step back. Let me put somebody else out there in front that it's going to give me different optics. The president is so aware of the media. He is probably better suited to run our media companies than the ones that are currently in charge of it. He is aware of optics. I call him the WWE president. He can capture the attention of a stadium and sway their emotions and lean on their emotions to get them to do what he wants to do. Tom Homan, sure, he gets the credit for coming from the Obama administration, but he's very in line with the messaging. Why do we need to mass deport? Why? For what reason? I'm against Trump's mass deportation policy. I think it's bullshit. I think it's inhumane. I think it's cruel. I think we should start at amnesty. I think the Democrats didn't do a good enough job at insulating our community from what we're seeing right now. I think that the immigration system is intentionally broken because it's all about money. And that anyone who tries to negotiate or thinks that they're going to negotiate with the GOP on this issue is naive at best and dumb at worst because they lose their boogeyman. I don't know where the Democrats have been on this, why they've dragged their feet, other than to think that, I don't know, man, you get the criticism that the immigrants aren't going to vote right away, even though the right says that that's why they're coming here. But here I am, a third generation Mexican American, a Chicano, right? Que todavía me puedo defender en español también, aunque soy pocho. I still speak Spanish, right? And they still look at us as foreigners, Chuck. It doesn't matter how long we've been in this country. None of that matters, man. None of that matters. And so for the GOP to think that you're going to negotiate on this immigration issue, I could solve the immigration. That's what I was on with Congressman Jimmy Gomez right now. I could solve the immigration crisis in 90 seconds, man. You need more immigration court justices to process these asylum claims. You need more Customs and Border Protection, not Customs and Border Patrol. People get that wrong all the time. Customs and Border Protection agents at the ports of entry to process these asylum claims. As Democrats, you give concessions and give funding for the wall in parts of the border, like South Texas in the Rio Grande Valley, where it's the most active sector and people it helps the agents down there. And then, they say Border Patrol doesn't have enough boots on the ground. You got the money for that now. They should be down in those open fields. Border Patrol agents shouldn't be on our streets of America. That's what ICE is for. Everyone, the general public, thinks ICE. They say abolish ICE or fuck ICE. They have no idea what they're talking about.
Right.
It's DHS and then it's ICE. They do the interior enforcement. Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protection. Within these divisions, you have ERO, HSI, BORTAC. And so, I don't know, man. Like, I'm glad where was y'all's energy 20 years ago? I'm glad people's energy are finally catching up with this now, but it's like, why aren't we going after the employers who employ undocumented labor? Why aren't we going after the system that allows a migrant to come here from another country to get a tax ID, pay taxes into the system, never get any of those taxes returned to them, and all of a sudden they're the fucking problem?
Right. There was something put out today, and I'm glad you said.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad you said that. For those of you listening, you should go check out the Cato Institute. That's CATO, and what they put out today. And let me read their tweet today. Today, the Cato Institute published our reports providing the first look at the fiscal effects of the wave of legal and illegal immigration over the last 3 decades. It shows immigrants created surpluses every year by a combined, get this, y'all, $14.5 trillion, even as the deficit grew. That's what immigrants are bringing to this country, to make Nick's point. There's another point I'd make from a personal experience. Most of you know that our team for 16 years now has been a majority minority firm. We have always been 100% Black, Latino, AAPI run and operated. We have many, many immigrants who've come through our firm, many of them that work there today that have legal documentation. And because I do the payroll with a group of folks, they pay Social Security. And matter of fact, Nick, use this if you want. I'm a small business owner. The 2 business partners that I have both max out their Social Security every year because they make so much money that, for those of you who should know, if you make over 120 grand a year, you max out your Social Security after you pay like $11,000 of Social Security, no matter how much money you make. You all max out at that amount if you're over 120 grand. Now, these are 2 immigrants that, unless something dramatically changes, will never get Social Security. And they max out Social Security every year. And that's just the 2 that work with me that have legal documentation, but are in fact immigrants who, quote unquote, have been trying to go through the system for years, but it just gets prolonged and prolonged, whether it's DACA, TPS, name and pick your poison.
Yeah.
And explain to me, if we're trying to get the worst of the worst, why we're going to the Social Security Department to get Social Security rolls on immigrants that are paying Social Security to lock those people up, or showing up in courtrooms where folks are, quote unquote, doing it the right way, criminal background checks, reporting to a parole officer, going through an asylum process. All of those things are what my white redneck friends back in East Texas would say, well, why don't they just do it the right way, Chuck? Well, it seems like they are. Is that what you're saying, Nick?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And the right way could be 20 plus years is because the system is broken. Or you can be Nicki Minaj and get a gold card because you're famous and rich. That's capitalism, I guess. I was raised, I think it all starts in the home, and I was raised to use my privilege to speak out against those who are powerful. I think journalism is my resource, is my weapon. It's my ability to stand on my platform and speak out. And I criticize Chuck because I love this country, not because I hate it. I'm a journalist because we have the First Amendment. I think it's the coolest job in the world. When these founding fathers went into this experiment, they thought of free speech. They thought of somebody like me and you and the ability to talk our shit and do it because we love this country, not because we hate it. You know, and for me, I still consider myself a journalist, but I'm not part of this great myth anymore of being objective. I never believed in objectivity. And so for me, I could be rigorously honest about where I stand and what I stand. And it's morality and this beacon of morality and light and clarity, moral clarity that I have that continues to have me marching down this path and not going to get a $350,000 correspondent job at another network with health insurance. You know, I am betting on myself because I tell all of the young journalists that used to come in my office at CNN to bet on themselves. So if I believe in God, I've got to rely on God and I've got to take my own advice. And I still feel like I'm uniquely positioned to do all of this because I've been in this for 20 years, man. I come from this traditional media background, but I'm still young enough to be able to take my phone out in the streets and get millions of views. You know, I mean, it's become so clear to me what's going on there, out there in the country. I used to think saying things like fascism was too dramatic. I used to think saying things like our country is at war was not factual. The fact is that we have fascism that is seeped into parts of our society where we have journalists that are being jailed. And I'll tell you an example of fascism, right? Don Lemon gets arrested, right? Whether you agree with him or not. And what happens, Chuck? Me and thousands of other creators, who knows how many, are on the phone that next morning making plans for our arrest, for our detention. That's fascism seeping into our subconscious to get us fearful and scared that we shouldn't be speaking the truth out there, that we shouldn't be speaking out when what we're doing is the most American thing that we can do.
I think you're exactly right. And it makes me think about the thing that really frustrates me the most about this whole episode is that we as a country who are full of hope and optimism, me and you are literally products of the American dream.
Yes.
Like the
Yes.
privilege you talk about of speaking out, I didn't know anything about that privilege growing up in a trailer house in East Texas with a single
Mm,
mother,
mm.
having a Mexican father, having a 15-year-old mother when I was born. And understanding and learning about my privilege as I joined the union, as I figured out what workers' rights were about, and figuring out that people actually had a chance to actually speak up without losing their job through a grievance procedure and all the different things, right? So I grew up with these old boys who today, many of them and women, are really hurting, and what Donald Trump's made it easy for them to do is find a scapegoat to blame the other. Now, blaming the other is not new, and you can go back through your history and figure out how we blamed others from Jewish people to other folks. All throughout history, the others have always been the ones to blame. But the crux to that is that there's because of the social media and because of information out there, folks are looking for an outlet and somebody to blame because the American project has left a lot of this American experiment, more so than a project, has left a lot of working class people behind as things have gotten more expensive, as manufacturing jobs have left, as all of this wealth has been concentrated with just a handful of people. Folks are really, really hurting. And I respect that and I get that. But blaming the immigrant who's paying for your Social Security, probably, or because this guy is in office and they want to blame this thing or these others who don't look like us is not the way we are as Americans at our core. And I think that it's an opportunity now because of the overreach of the administration and Republicans in Congress. They have something to bear here as well. That there's an opportunity for a pushback from regular folks. I don't mean this is a Democrat Republican thing, but sure, there's more of an opportunity for Democrats. We saw that in Texas on Saturday with a special election that swung 30 points, and Latinos who swung back to the left. But an opportunity for folks that don't have a MAGA picture on their wall at home, as I said this week on CNN, or have a Bernie Sanders tattoo. Folks that are just trying to figure it out in the middle, who don't have the privilege to be MAGA or the privilege to be Bernie, who are just trying to figure it out every day. I'm here to tell you, Latinos aren't your enemy. Brown people aren't your enemy. Wealth and business are your enemy because they care less about you. They care about their wealth and their business.
And that's why
That's what
you're
we have
so
to
important.
refocus people on.
You're so important, Chuck, because you speak from a place that's not elitism, even though you've made it to this apex and in those rooms with the fat cats, right? What's way more pervasive in the media than this liberal bias is a bias of elitism, where they just end up talking to los ricos apoyan a los ricos, like people are just helping out each other. And so that's why you're so important. That's why I rock with you, man. Like, you say things that remind me of what I grew up as, what Democrats were, what my dad was when he loved Bill Clinton, right? It's like the guys that played football but are still stinted enough to open the door for their girlfriends or pay for their meals, right? I mean, like, you're still working out, but still also open-minded enough to say, hey, look, this is for me. You don't have to be like this. I'm not some alpha male like that needs to impress all my values or whatever the manosphere is out there, right? Like, I just think there's such an opportunity right now for rigorous honesty. People are upset at journalists like me, at places like I used to work at, because they feel that they are being lied to. And again, I reiterate that I'm no longer feeling like I need to be part of this great myth of objectivity. And it doesn't mean that I can't be fair. My metric as a journalist is fairness. And I think part of the reason why I'm having success right now is that in real time, people saw that when shit was hitting the fan, I was able to be calm, measured, and was respectful of what was going on around me without adding. I had heard somebody say, if there's a fire, do you want to bring wood or do you want to bring water? I wasn't bringing wood to the fire in front of me, right? I was documenting what was going on. And I learned something about the American public as well, is that they are desperate for rigorous honesty. They are so desperate to know exactly where your values stand so they don't have to figure it out. No one is going to get me at saying I stand for the undocumented immigrants. I'm very clear. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to say President Trump or respect the office or be respectful to a federal agent who's in tactical gear doing shit that I fundamentally disagree with, but you're still, in a position of authority. And like, I am going to lean into those ethics. And I think right now that's the opportunity, because if I'm being rigorously honest, there are independent journalists out there who are in the middle of news gathering are saying fuck ICE or throwing shit at the cops. And that confuses the cops to the point where it puts a situation where I'm having a shotgun pointed at my chest because they don't know if I'm really who I say I am or someone who's only appearing to be that way, you know?
Uh, yeah, and I think you're exactly right. And I think as we think about the culture and we think about what you just described, it's important that our culture, this Latinidad,
Yeah.
the folks that are our brothers and our sisters, they are all shapes and forms. Like, I
Yeah.
am proud Mexican American, just like you are, but we could not be more different. You're here with this LA hat on. I got this dumb cowboy hat that I always wear. And our culture, whether America likes it or not, and most of America will like this, most of America will love this, and that's why he's the number one streaming artist in the world. But this weekend, during the Super Bowl, one of our people, one of the
Yeah.
people who is American and a proud Puerto Rican named Bad Bunny will be performing at the Super Bowl. And I bring that up to end this to talk about the way that the Hispanic culture, the Latinidad, the folks that have been part of this, whether they were an undocumented farm worker, whether they were singing music, whether they were building businesses in East LA, whether they were kids walking out of school protesting segregation, our community has become a fabric of who this country is. I just told you the $14 trillion that we've added to help with the debt over the last century. There's so much of that. And now it's seeped into the real fabric of culture, where you have a guy like Bad Bunny, who is Puerto Rican, proud Puerto Rican, who has
Yeah.
been trying to literally almost single-handedly save his island from just being raped and pillaged by folks who don't care about his island. He will be front and center in Spanish during the Super Bowl. Just that act, no defiance, just him singing his music will drive certain people crazy. But I also see it as an opportunity of highlighting a beautiful part of our culture and a beautiful part of our people. When Bad Bunny said what he said at the Emmys this week, folks will say and only talk about when he said ice out. But the part that stuck with me is when he said you have to fight with love. You don't fight with guns, you don't fight with sticks, you fight with love. And I think that's what he's bringing to the Super Bowl. And I want to know your reaction on seeing Bad Bunny front and center on Sunday.
This cannot be an anonymous revolution with masks and hoodies, and Bad Bunny is helping put a face on this in a way that's critical, but it's not dehumanizing. In a way that shows that Latinos, we say from East LA, man, the border crossed us. I'm one of those 1848 Mexican families with the Treaty of Hidalgo and the border crossed us. We were here. That's not something I talk about a lot, but it's something that's really reflected right now a lot is that donde quiera hay Latinos trabajando duro, wherever you want and wherever you see there's a Latino working hard. We are such a fabric of this workforce that it's so backwards in the Central Valley. When I'm there, Chuck, picking grapes with the grape pickers, I started my platform back in June, and that was one of the first stories. They are so confused as to why President Trump is going out at them, targeting them. They said in any other scenario, we would be voting for him. A lot of our values align with the conservatives. Like, why are we being targeted? Or then there's the mom in Utah who is also deported right now, who I interviewed, and paid $50,000 in taxes last year to go into your Social Security and to go into this economy to help build it, right? Make it strong. The president is going after America's workforce. That doesn't make sense. And I'll leave you with this. On average, we had 40,000 people in ICE custody in those beds after they're detained. Right now, we have 60, maybe 75,000 people in those beds. And the president wants to put 150,000 people in those beds. Do you think they are going to stop at the undocumented American, or are they going to start targeting the undesirable? Are they start going after journalists? Are they going to start going after people who are criticizing the administration? We are shooting ourselves in the foot, man. We are shooting ourselves in the foot as a country. And I'm so grateful for you giving me the opportunity to talk about all this that's going on, man. I really appreciate you, Chuck.
I
Thank
think
you so much.
I think it's important for folks again to understand the importance of independent journalism. Our journalism is changing as a whole. We've all witnessed what
Yes.
we're seeing today at the Washington Post. For those of you who have been following that story, a giant layoff at one of the nation's largest newspapers. So it's
Yeah.
important to support these independent journalists to get the real stories out there. Again, Nick, give us a place where folks can come and subscribe to all your handles.
Yeah, Nick Valencia News. It's all over everywhere. If you want to buy me a coffee, help me out. It's buymeacoffee/Nick, GANICKGA. You could donate to my Stripe as well. That's on the top of my Instagram. But all my social medias are Nick Valencia News. And yeah, we're 8 months into this. And just this last month, Chuck, we eclipsed 30 million views. That's on Instagram, Substack, YouTube, and Facebook. We're out there, man. We're doing it, and we're dedicated to this. This is not parachuting in and out. This is what I think is the biggest story of our lifetime right now, and we're front and center.
We're going to be inviting Nick to come up and be a part of our big White House correspondent dinner weekend where we're going to be honoring Hispanic journalists like Nick and lots of other folks who've been fighting on the front line. So we want you to come up. We want you to be part of our celebration. Come to D.C. We'll get you the details. We're trying to gather all the reporters, Hispanic reporters around the country to be at our gala on the Saturday of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I'll give you more information. I'm breaking news here. Thank you, my brother.
Oh
And
my God. Do you know this is like a dream of mine? Like, no fucking way, dude. I like have always wanted to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I've always like wanted to be there.
Yeah,
Are you
you're going to
You're
be
serious?
there. You're going to come to our brunch. We're going to be talking to all the journalists who have been covering the Minnesota stuff on ICE. This is a thing I put together. This is the fourth year. We call it the Brown and Bougie Brunch at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You got to find your red sports coat, get you a cowboy hat. Nick Valencia, we'll see you on the flip flop, my friend.
God bless you, brother. Thank you.
Be good now.